Tonight, life beyond level 0 beckons. The First Minister confirms most COVID restrictions will end on Monday. But don't bin your face masks yet. Some measures are here to stay.
I'm not going to shout freedom from this virus because I think it misleads people. The virus is circulating. The risk of new variants is there.
All businesses can reopen. Contact tracing will continue. But double-vaxxed close contacts will no longer have to self-isolate. For schools, though, the wait goes on. Restrictions will stay when pupils return.
For sport, it means the possibility of full stadiums. New Hibs chief Ben Kensell says Easter Road is ready for capacity crowds.
And 25 years after Oasis went supersonic at Loch Lomond, we look back at the rock and roll star's most iconic Scottish gig. I'm Gordon Chree in Glasgow.
And I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh. This is the STV News at 6.
Good evening. The end of the world as we know it, at least as far as most COVID restrictions are concerned. After 18 months of living through extraordinary circumstances and unprecedented conditions, life is to return to a near normal. From next Monday, we move beyond level 0, meaning a whole host of legal restrictions are lifted. All businesses will be allowed to open and social distancing will be ditched.
Some things, though, will remain. Face masks will continue to be mandatory indoors. Testing will continue and the push to get everyone vaccinated will go on. In a moment, we'll look at how this impacts on business and schools across the country. But first, to our political editor, Colin Mackay, who's outside the Parliament for us just now. Colin, a big day.
This is quite a moment, really, isn't it? Pretty much the end of most of the COVID restrictions in Scotland. Who would have predicted a week ago that we were about to see the reopening of nightclubs, even if you'll have to wear your mask while you're dancing, because, as the First Minister made clear, this pandemic is not over yet, so masks will continue to be a thing for some time to come in Scotland. So will giving your details to test and protect when you go into a premises. But a couple of weeks ago, they scrapped all the restrictions in England. Now there, the case numbers have continued to fall, just as they have been doing in Scotland. So on Monday, the restrictions that have been in place, most of the restrictions that have been in place for pretty much 18 months now, will be lifted, as Stephen Brown reports.
Since March last year, Tony Cochrane's nightclubs have been silent, but from next Monday, they can finally reopen.
It's a year and a half of closure of something you did every weekend of your life, and suddenly it just come to a standstill. It was even more hard for the staff who, this is part of their life coming every week. It's also the financial impact. I mean, we struggled heavily. We have 11 clubs, so you multiply the problem times 11.
It's not been the greatest. It's been 16, nearly 17 months in no work. It's been that length of time furlough. Trying to find another job to cover has just not happened at all.
From the 9th of August, most of the restrictions we've been living under will go. Physical distancing will end in most places, no businesses will be forced to close, and there won't be a limit on household gatherings. But masks will still be mandatory, home working is still advised, limits on large organised events, and a warning that local measures might be needed in the future.
I think it's good news. I think keeping the face masks definitely is the right way to go. I think throwing them away just wouldn't be right at all.
I'm a frontline doctor and I've been working in ICU looking after COVID positive patients this year. I think the fact that we're keeping face masks is incredibly important.
Contact tracing will remain in place, but with businesses struggling as close contacts have to isolate, there will be a change.
An adult who is identified as a close contact of someone who has tested positive will no longer be required automatically to self-isolate for 10 days. Instead, if someone is double vaccinated with at least 2 weeks since the second dose, and if they have no symptoms, They should get a PCR test as soon as possible, and if the PCR test is negative, self-isolation can then be ended.
We've now moved beyond level 0. Again, people would rightly assume this means that COVID restrictions have been dropped, but still curbs remain in place. Yet again, the goalposts have been moved.
The vaccine rollout has driven our way out of restrictions. Today it was confirmed that the government is preparing for booster jabs and for possible COVID certificates to be used in Scotland.
You're saying we're going to try to reopen nightclubs, really high-risking settings, to remove distancing, to get back to more economic activity. And the question is, can vaccines and testing together do the heavy lifting and let us lift some of these blanket restrictions? And so I think, yes, many parts in the States are looking at us and saying, with the kind of uptake that we've had, extraordinarily high, especially in older age groups, is that enough? And the hope is right now, with the numbers we have declining, it will be enough.
Hospitality venues like cafes and pubs will still need to continue to take our details, but relaxing the physical distancing will make a real difference. At Dundee's Transport Museum, they're hopeful of the months ahead.
It means that we can have more volunteers working, we can have less home working. For our events, we can, the public can feel a lot more comfortable. We don't have to worry about capacity, we don't have to worry about online booking so much. And in the museum itself, in the cafe, we can put the tables closer together again. I guess we can build back the sense of community that's been lost from having to stay away from each other.
This is the closest to normality that we've seen in a year and a half. More freedoms, yes, but still the watchword is caution. Stephen Brown, STV News.
Well, a short time ago, Colin spoke to Professor Linda Bald to gauge her reaction to the latest changes.
Caution has been the First Minister's watchword in terms of restrictions over the last 18 months, but she's been much bolder today. Professor Linda Bald, has she thrown caution to the wind to some degree?
I think there's a lot of mitigation still in place. It's actually contrast to some of the approaches down south. We know that face covering is still required, and also I think the rules around, still working from home if you can and that kind of thing, those are important differences. But it's a big shift. I mean, let's face it, nighttime economy opening up, these are risky environments. I think we're going to have to really monitor the situation over the next few weeks.
Because the pandemic's clearly not over. 9 deaths in the last 24 hours. Are we opening up too fast, do you think? Is she going too far just now?
So if you were only looking at this from a public health perspective, you would vaccinate all adults with both doses, you would give vaccines to teenagers, and then you would make the shift. But, there's lots of other harms that people are thinking about. Public health is not the only priority. So all governments around the world have got to find their own way through this.
And the schools are about to open up. Why aren't we vaccinating teenagers, secondary school pupils?
Well, it'll be interesting to hear if we see a change in advice to JCVI. I look around the world at the other high-income countries that are doing this. I'm not persuaded that their teenagers are different from ours. So I really hope we will see that shift. I think it would reassure young people and parents and carers.
The First Minister took some criticism from the opposition leaders today about the message. Is the messaging clear enough on public health at the moment, do you think?
It's been muddy most of the way through. I think policymakers have tried to communicate what people can and cannot do, but the thing you need to recognise, and we all need to recognise, is that there are different groups in the population. There are those that will welcome this change and really take full advantage of it, and others that will be very concerned and cautious. And whether we're giving enough reassurance to those that are clinically vulnerable, I'm not sure.
Because that's the point. Some people will be terrified of today's announcement. A lot of people will be delighted, but some people will be terrified.
I think the point is that the messaging has been that the virus has not gone away. They can also see that you're not fully protected with both doses of the vaccine. So of course those people will be concerned. I think we really need to make sure that we address their questions and concerns and provide them with some protection. And that's why all of us wearing a face covering, for example, and distancing when we can is going to be important.
Professor Bald, thanks for joining us on the STV News Tonight.
While it's changed for most of the country on Monday, teachers and pupils will have to wait a bit longer before any major changes come into force in schools.
Face masks for secondary pupils and social distancing will still be required for 6 weeks when schools go back. But changes to test and protect rules mean the blanket isolation of whole classes will no longer be routine. Here's our political reporter, Laura Alderman.
forward stroke. Yeah, everybody's doing forwards.
Before taking to the water, preparation is key. But these young people from the Citadel Youth Centre in Leith are also preparing to move from primary to high school in just a few weeks' time. And there's more than the usual first day nerves on their minds.
I don't like wearing face masks. It's very hard to breathe. So I don't want to wear a face mask.
It will be different from primary school because in primary school we didn't really have to wear masks, but apart from that, I'm not too worried about it.
And there's hopes there'll be less self-isolating this time round.
We done homeschooling for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, which was really a struggle because the Wi-Fi, everyone in the house is using Wi-Fi. So that impacts our learning as well.
They'll have a new school, new friends, and now new COVID rules in the classroom too.
If a young person aged 5 to 17 is identified as a close contact, they will need to take a PCR test, but they can end their self-isolation if they test negative. Children under the age of 5 will be encouraged but not required to get PCR tests. This means that the blanket isolation of whole classes will no longer be routine.
However, for the first 6 weeks of term, children over 12 will still have to wear face coverings in school buildings, and staff must maintain a 1 metre distance from adults and pupils. It's had a mixed response amongst some parents and students.
Children weren't then turned into cases after they had self-isolated, so a lot of parents felt, that was a bit of a waste, obviously. It has affected every single year, but just in different ways. It has been very disruptive.
Teachers say the changes offer a degree of reassurance, but are still urging caution.
In schools, we've got 6 weeks before anything is going to change. It gives us a chance to work out what effect schools going back is going to have on the numbers and positive cases.
Glad to hear about the CO2 monitors. I think that's very welcome. I think that's a very positive step. So what we need now is clear guidance on how we use these monitors. I hope that we see them in school soon.
Only children aged 12 to 17 who are deemed to be vulnerable are currently being offered the COVID vaccine.
How do you feel about going back to the classroom when the majority of children won't be vaccinated?
I'm not concerned for myself, but I do worry about children who are either clinically vulnerable themselves or are living with an adult who's clinically vulnerable. I feel that they need some more protection. Also, I haven't heard any mention of what protections will be in place for children and families from the Black and minority ethnic communities who we know are more vulnerable to COVID. I feel like they've been missed out in this announcement.
School staff and pupils are being asked to continue doing lateral flow tests at home just before and during term time. It's hoped these changes will bring some normality back to the classrooms and steady the waters when the school bell rings next. Laura Alderman, STV News.
OK, let's go back to our political editor, Colin Mackay now. Pretty major news from Parliament today, but this wasn't the only thing on the agenda.
No, we had the good news of the easing of the COVID restrictions from the First Minister, but then we had the Drugs Minister, Angela Constant, responding to the horrendous drugs deaths figures, 1,339 drug-related deaths last year. Today she described that as our national shame, and you remember that comes after the First Minister at the STV election debate said that she had taken her eye off the ball on this. Well, that was the accusation that the opposition leaders threw back at her today. They were angry that she wasn't making that statement to Parliament today, as well as the one on COVID.
Behind all those shocking statistics are lost loved ones and broken families. When is the First Minister in this government going to wake up? When will she stop abandoning our communities? When is she going to listen to those on the front line?
I'm extremely disappointed that this statement has not been delivered by the First Minister today. Nicola Sturgeon could not escape the fact that she and her party have been in government for almost 15 years, that she cut the budgets for drug and alcohol services, and that under her watch, our drugs deaths in Scotland are almost 5 times that of the rest of the UK.
This is a public health emergency, and that we can't arrest our way out of a drugs death crisis, and that we need to be reducing demand for drugs as well as the supply.
We've also had the highest number of drug misuse deaths in England and Wales for almost 20 years announced today, but nothing compared to those in Scotland. So from the Scottish Government today, humility. From the opposition, condemnation. I think this now brings it to something of a political head. That's probably what campaigners want to see, because now what they want to see on this, after all the harsh words on both sides, is action. And it might also come up tomorrow because the Prime Minister is in Scotland. He'll be having meetings. I think it may come up at some of them, but it won't come up at a meeting with the First Minister because I told you last night about her invitation. Well, he's declined that offer.
OK, another busy day in prospect. Colin, thank you.
Other stories across Scotland now, and pre-pandemic figures show well over a third of cancer patients in Scotland were diagnosed when the disease was at a later stage. A national audit found 37% of cases were diagnosed at stage 3 or 4. 34% of cancers were caught at an earlier stage.
An 18-year-old woman has died following a crash on the A9 in Perthshire. Emergency services were called to Burnham near Dunkeld just before 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. The driver was pronounced dead at the scene.
Now, a charity in East Lothian is aiming to replace no ball game signs with play-friendly banners across the area. It's hoped the new signs will encourage children to use open spaces to play and improve their physical and mental well-being. Vanessa Kennedy has been finding out more.
Play is a normal part of development, learning and fun for children. But with these signs a common sight in East Lothian, it doesn't always feel like a welcome prospect. Now this team at the East Lothian Play Association are hoping to change that.
We went and spoke to some children at Pinkie St Peter's Primary School in Musselburgh. They told us that the signs made them feel unwelcome and that it wasn't just about ball games, it made them feel unwelcome in the space. And one of the children told us that when we feel unwelcome, we're more likely to stay home and play computer games.
Now they've designed brand new banners encouraging play rather than discouraging ball games. And in order to encourage children to make use of outdoor spaces, the group come to parks like this and arrange pop-up play days, something that goes down well with these locals.
You get to build like dens and you get to play about here. We get to do cool things with the parachutes. We all love it here, and then the best thing to do is basically dressing up.
The people behind this project say that in a post-lockdown world, days like these are important for children.
They see these signs, no ball games, no play allowed here, and then it limits them, and they may show up to other similar locations and think, oh, I know that I'm not allowed to play it somewhere like this. So it really has a bigger impact on them than we know. But yeah, we really try to create that sort of invitation and welcome and show children that they're welcome to play at these spaces.
It's hoped these new signs will become a permanent fixture in the area and create a more play-friendly environment for children across East Lothian. Vanessa Kennedy, STV News.
OK, let's go your sport now with Sheila.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's.
Good evening. Hibernian's new chief executive says full houses at Easter Road can't come soon enough after they were granted a capacity of more than 5,500 for Thursday's European tie against Rijeka. Earlier, the First Minister announced clubs must continue to liaise with local authorities to determine crowd sizes above 5,000. Ben Kensell told Jamie Borthwick that Easter Road is ready to have the big crowds back.
Yeah, it's ready. It's a fine stadium. There are some remedial works to the north and south stands, some new kiosks that we've put in. Ron has invested in big screens, so to boost the commercial opportunity here, and also the sort of match day production and environment. But ultimately, no, we want to welcome back fans as safely as we can, which is very important, number one priority for us. But actually, no, we want to get a full crowd back in as soon as we possibly can, for obvious reasons, to support the team on the pitch, but actually for financial and commercial reasons as well. From my perspective, it can't come soon enough, but we'll wait for the guidance and then we'll act appropriately.
One of the first big things in your inbox would be Josh Doig. What can you tell us about his future?
Well, firstly, Josh has had a phenomenal breakthrough season, didn't he? So there will naturally be interest in a player of that standing. Scottish Young Player of the Year, at a tender age, but actually has really matured from that perspective. Will go on and improve, and obviously clubs are going to pay a certain amount of interest. There's nothing concrete for me to add further than that, but it's ongoing at the moment.
Sort of the model, though, isn't he, of young players coming into this club, proving themselves. And then the chance is there, if the money's right, for them to go to a higher level. Is that the big selling point of this club? Yeah,
it's definitely an identity that I want to build on, and I actually don't think we've done it well enough to date. I think Hibs has a good, rich history of bringing players through, giving them an opportunity, presenting a pathway from academy all the way up, or bringing young players in and giving them an opportunity. That's why Jack is, in my opinion, such a highly regarded coach. You know, what happens on the pitch is the most important thing at the club, so we have to support the ambitions of the club appropriately, and the fans shouldn't and wouldn't expect anything less, so you know, we've got to deliver on that.
Well, it was a super silver Tuesday for Scots at the Tokyo Olympics, with 4 clinching a place on the podium. The women's and men's cycling teams joined Argyll sailor Anna Burnett with their second place finishes, while on the track, Gemma Reekie just missed out.
Alarms were set early for family and friends of Anna Burnett at the Royal Northern and Clyde Yacht Club as they gathered before breakfast to watch the 28-year-old in action. And as she and partner John Gimson crossed the line to win silver in the mixed NACRA 17 class, her parents raised a glass to celebrate.
Slightly relieved that it's all over, but very, very happy and excited for them in particular. Yes, yeah.
Totally elated and still buzzing.
Attention then turned to the velodrome, and after breaking a world record in the team pursuit semi-final, Scots Katie Archibald and Nia Evans were part of the GB team in the final a few hours later. But ultimately Germany proved too strong and they had to settle for silver. There was also silver for Paisley's Jack Carlin. He was part of the men's team sprint trio, which finished behind Netherlands in the final. At the Olympic Stadium, Gemma Reekie came so close to a medal at her first ever games, running a personal best in the 800 metres and missing out on bronze by 900ths of a second. Andrew Butchert booked his place in Friday's 5,000 metre final, finishing 7th in his heat. Elsewhere in diving, James Heatley finished 9th in the men's 3-metre springboard final. And in canoeing, Deborah Kerr came 8th in the women's kayak single 200 metres final.
OK, rugby news now, and British and Irish Lions head coach Warren Gatland says Finn Russell could be the key to winning the Test series against South Africa after the Scot recovered from injury to make the bench. Ali Price and Duhan van der Merwe make the starting 15, but there's no place in the squad for Stuart Hogg. A win for the Lions on Saturday would secure an overall series victory. OK, final bit of football news. Rangers are in Champions League qualifying tonight. It's currently 0-0 in Malmo, and that's all your sport.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's.
Well, it's been a drizzly day here in Edinburgh. Let's see how it's looking over the coming days. Here's Sean with the weather forecast.
Blue skies and sunshine are in the forecast. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Well, our weather this week is predominantly going to be driven by this area of low pressure that's just coming out of eastern Canada, speeding its way across the Atlantic. And what it does mean is we'll see lots of showers developing through the week. So after the very dry conditions in July, lots of rain on the way over the next couple of days. And we'll need to watch out for Friday showers that could be particularly thundery. Now, for the time being, we've seen a few showers out there this afternoon. A lot of cloud further west today as well. Any showers tending to ease away later on this evening, becoming mostly dry, some clear spells. And those temperatures again, perhaps in the odd spot, rural areas down to about 8 or 9 degrees. But for most of us, our temperatures should hold in double figures. Now, tomorrow it's a dry start today, plenty of sunshine, and it should stay that way into the afternoon. Just the possibility of a few showers bubbling up, but generally a dry day tomorrow. light winds, and also feeling not too bad in the sunshine. Looks as if here in the east we'll actually have some of the highest temperatures tomorrow, up to around 22 degrees Celsius. Haddington, probably our top spots. Feeling nice in the sunshine, but do watch out for the odd dark cloud bubbling up and a few scattered showers. But those showers turning a lot more frequent as we head towards the end of the week, particularly so Thursday and Friday. Lots of them still around on Saturday. The risk of some flooding issues on Friday from those showers, easing on Sunday. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Finally tonight, 25 years ago, thousands of music fans descended on Balloch to see Oasis play on the banks of Loch Lomond.
It was one of the biggest ever gigs in Scotland and one which made memories that will live forever. Here's Laura Boyd.
Some might say it was their favourite gig of all time.
It's brilliant, couldn't be better, excellent. How are you doing, Mum? Brilliant.
The scenery is amazing.
There were famous faces in the crowd.
I think they're a great live band, they always put on a good show. It's pretty down to earth, honest music.
And while not everyone in Balloch was mad for it,
Oh, I'm not interested at all.
Well, I mean, nowadays.
It's not my kind of music. I like opera.
Oasis at Loch Lomond made an impact on so many, including Alan McGee, the man who first discovered the band.
I think they loved it, you know, and you know they always loved Scotland because Scotland was right on Oasis from day one, you know. Well, we got a great iconic photograph from that time. It was like, you know, when the brothers are on stage and I think they kiss each other on the lips. We got one of the great Oasis photographs of that.
Someone else who got his own iconic photograph from that time is Donald MacLeod, one of the promoters who put on the show.
They say, you know, don't look back in anger, look back in absolute wonder that 25 years later I'm standing in the very site where it was probably the biggest, the most significant gigs that Scotland's ever put on.
Officially, 80,000 fans were in attendance, but Donald thinks otherwise.
There was a lot more than 80,000. They were pulling down fencing over there, they were pulling down fencing, they were swimming across the loch.
I don't believe anybody feels the way I do about you now.
The crowd were bananas, they tried to steal a generator.
We spoke to some fans who did not steal a generator, Your Honour, but one may have stolen a kiss or two as he celebrated his honeymoon at the gig.
Our wedding previous weeks, we had a ceilidh and then a disco, and one of my greatest memories was all our friends standing in a big circle singing along to Don't Look Back in Anger at our wedding. So Oasis was a theme running through our wedding and also the honeymoon, so we have very special memories of my honeymoon, but also, of course, of going to that concert.
I want to say that they played the set of their life, and they absolutely did. I cried during Champagne Supernova, I cried during Live Forever. It was just incredible.
Well, it might be 25 years on, but it's clear that Oasis at Loch Lomond will definitely, maybe, go down in history as one of Scotland's greatest gigs ever. Laura Boyd, STV News, Balloch.
Wonderwall memories there, but I'm out of time, so better just roll with it.
And some might say we'll be back tomorrow. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.